Good morning from beautiful BC, where it's pouring like crazy today. Good afternoon, I guess, to the rest of the country. My name is Bill Hardy. I am a CNLA board member as well as a Communities in Bloom board member. And I'm here today to help facilitate this session that we have with Jennifer. Before we begin our webinar today, actually going back just a second, welcome to the 2020 virtual symposium presentation today. We're excited to learn more about green infrastructure, rain gardens, bioswales, permeable pavers, and urban forests. So before we begin our webinar today, we'd like to thank all of the Communities in Bloom sponsors and partners at this time for their contribution to our 2020 special edition. Their support and the support of our registered communities is truly appreciated. Today's webinar is sponsored by one of our longtime sponsors, Ball Horticulture. Thanks so much to Ball for their support of our program this year, and let's move on and look at a little video from Ball Horticulture.
Hello, I'm Marvin Miller from the Ball Horticultural Company in West Chicago, Illinois, USA, and we are proud to be a sponsor of Communities in Bloom. In particular, we sponsor the International Challenge, and it is something we appreciate being able to do because we are a global company. Though based in the U.S., we do have a location in Canada, as well as in 20 countries around the world. And wherever we have a company, our employees do participate in whatever local In Bloom program there is. We believe in Bloom programs because we understand the power of plants. We understand their power for environmental causes, for societal health in general, and for economic drivers for communities. And we're happy to do this because we recognize that. So from the Ball Horticultural Company, our owner Anna Ball, and all of the employees worldwide, thank you for letting us be part of Communities in Bloom.
I'd like to welcome our speaker today, Jennifer Portsmouth. Jennifer has worked in the landscape industry since 1998 at Pavers Landscaping, and she has been with the company for her entire career. She specializes in landscape maintenance. Specifically, Jennifer oversees the landscape maintenance of over 350 multifamily and commercial properties, which all contain green infrastructure elements. Over the years, she has worked in various capacities and is currently Executive Vice President. In addition to having a residential landscape maintenance diploma, she is also Certified Landscape Horticulturalist Manager, Certified Landscape Horticulturalist Technician, and a Certified Irrigation Technician. Most recently, she completed all of the green infrastructure courses at BCIT's Center for Architectural Ecology to complement her field experience, with the goal of educating their staff and clients on their benefits. Jennifer, go ahead, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. There we go. Can you see my screen okay there, Bill? Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. So welcome to my little seminar here on green infrastructure. So thank you very much for the excellent introduction there, Bill. I'll just breeze right through it and move right into the outline. So today I'd like to discuss about the importance of stormwater management and touch on just the movement cities are making in the shift from gray infrastructure, which is all of our parking lots, patios, highways, all of our buildings and whatnot, and then just the shift to moving things over to green infrastructure. We'll talk about the benefits of that, and then the various green infrastructure elements, which we're touched on, rain gardens, bioswales, permeable pavers, and urban forests. And I'd also like to quickly touch on green roofs as well, because I feel like that it's hard to have this conversation without discussing that. And then we'll talk a little bit about the future and where we're headed. So just to begin with, the issue of stormwater is, that's the issue really. So in the natural environment, rainwater is absorbed and filtered by our trees, plants, and soil. However, this natural water cycle is disrupted in cities where the rainwater can't penetrate the surfaces. And that's just because we've covered everything with pavement and whatnot. This water then picks up pollutants that ultimately end up in our waterways, which cause negative effects to water quality and wildlife. So just touching on the water cycle, I think we all kind of generally know how it works, but when the water is passing through the soil particles act as a filter, which physically clean the water as it passes through. And it is able to do this because soil particles are negatively charged and they hold on to contaminants, keeping them from reaching our water. And we've also got the benefit of microbes which live in the soil. And they live and can transform or decompose the organic chemicals that pass through with the water that we don't want to go through into our oceans and rivers and whatnot. So the traditional approach to water management was just to drain the stormwater away as quickly as possible into the nearest waterway. But we've learned over time that this isn't a good way to manage it. So, that's evident. Oh, I just want to go back here. This is a photo I took yesterday in downtown Vancouver, near BC Place Stadium, if you've ever been to Vancouver. And we did have a fairly heavy rain event. We're actually still kind of in it, but it was fairly heavy yesterday. And we had some pretty significant flooding. It was all localized to certain areas of the city. But this was downtown. This is a 5-lane road, and 4 of the lanes were covered in water. And you can see the water there is just spilling right over onto the sidewalk. And there's a lawn even under there that you can't really see. So this just sort of was a nice little reminder for me of how important this issue really is and how we need to deal with it. So, using Toronto as an example, they have had a lot of flooding in recent years. And, that's just because of the increasingly frequent rainfall. So rainfall is thought to be linked to global warming and changing climate and weather patterns. Because climate change is unavoidable, we must adapt how we manage everything. So our modern approaches try to mimic natural processes and allow the stormwater to soak into the ground, which will allow it to be released more slowly into our local waters. This doesn't mean, though, that we won't experience flooding, but if we can better manage the water that is falling, we can lessen the damaging impacts. So local governments are the ones that are responsible for managing our stormwater in general. They operate and maintain storm sewer systems and that carry the stormwater from private properties to the nearest waterway. Their responsibilities include enacting regulations, cleaning storm drains, and education programs, among many other things. And they are supported by the federal government in some ways. So the federal government does lay out and invest in green infrastructure initiatives on an ongoing basis. So depends on who's in power, I guess. So in terms of green infrastructure, essentially it's a network of strategies that are used to address urban and climate challenges. It uses soil, plants, and trees in swales, rain gardens, green roofs, and other structures that are built to capture and store and clean rainwater before returning it to our waterways and atmosphere. It can include reuse of rainwater for toilet flushing and irrigation as well. So by adding green space, it slows the flow of water down, thereby increasing the amount of rainwater that can be absorbed back into the atmosphere, and it helps keep our cities cool during extreme heat events. So it's important to support the growth of sustainable urban rainwater management practices now to ensure the longevity and health of our planet. So green infrastructure includes many different elements, but here are just a few of them. It's actually a fairly comprehensive list. So we've got bioswales, rain gardens, green roofs and walls, permeable pavers, soil cells, rainwater harvesting, wetlands, ravines, waterways, and riparian zones, meadows and agricultural lands, parks, gardens, grassed areas. It can include planters, rain barrels, cisterns, urban forests and woodlots, blue roofs, downspout disconnection, and urban agriculture. And more are being developed all the time. So the benefits of green infrastructure are many. It can improve air quality. Of course, it depends on what element of infrastructure it is. It can reduce the heat island effect. They tend to mimic the natural water cycle. They generally will serve to increase biodiversity. A lot of the green infrastructure that we use creates visual interest, and it fulfills our biophilic needs. So biophilia is the theory that humans need to interact with the natural environment and nature. It increases the lifespan of our sewers, and it can help save on costly infrastructure maintenance. So if we don't need all of this infrastructure, therefore we don't have to maintain it. And green infrastructure, some of the side benefits is it dampens noise, which can be really beneficial in the city. And it also retards fire. And of course, it all saves money. So we'll jump right into the various elements of our green infrastructure. So first topic here is bioswales. So essentially a bioswale is a man-made channel, and it's designed to hold stormwater while removing debris and pollutants. It consists of a swaled drainage course with gently sloped slides and of less than 6 degrees. It can reduce the volume of runoff from a typical road to about 75%. And depending on the site topography, swales, they may be straight or meandering. This one has got a nice curve in it. I've got another one that's nice and straight. It may be planted with lawn, ground cover, shrubs, trees, and mulches, or a combination of the above. So bioswales would be commonly installed along streets and around parking lots. The idea is that it's going to capture the automotive pollution that is settling on the pavement. So essentially what happens is when we get a heavy rain event, which would be considered the first flush. The first flush is the first rainfall that we would have after a while. And that first flush is what flushes away all of the sediment that's on those surfaces. It differs from a rain garden in that it has a sloped base to facilitate water movement and is generally larger in scale. So bioswale maintenance includes accumulation, removing the accumulation of sediments and trash and improper growth of vegetation, which can all affect the quality and performance of the swale. So we need to maintain it annually, and that will of course involve a visual inspection, but it may also include some soil testing, mechanical testing, and all of those things are crucial to the health of the bioswale. There are essentially 3 types or 3 levels of bioswale maintenance. The first one is more aesthetic in nature, and that's just required to remove the weeds that affect the performance of other plants, or maybe the bioswale itself. So cleaning it out, removing the trash, and maintaining the vegetation that's growing within it. So that could even just be cutting the grass if it's a grass swale. Partial restoration is needed when the inlet is blocked by the sediments, or when vegetation and mulch, etc., needs to be replaced. A full restoration may be required when the bioswale is no longer filtering out pollutants adequately and overall performance is severely lacking. And you can generally avoid full restoration or at least extend the life of the swale if you keep up with regular maintenance. So that is the key. So here is a bioswale that we have in Olympic Village in Vancouver. Water is diverted into the swale from the adjacent roadway. And you can see that some maintenance is required. This is the base of the swale, and you can see that the rocks that are designed to collect and trap all of the debris are getting covered. So at some point, maintenance is going to be needed. Moving on to rain gardens. So a rain garden is a garden of shrubs, perennials, flowers, and it's planted in a small depression. It is designed to temporarily hold and soak in rainwater runoff that flows from roofs, driveways, patios, or lawns. They are generally constructed on the downside of a naturally existing slope, and they allow about 30% more water to be filtered versus, say, just a lawn outside of your home. Infiltration may take up to 48 hours after a major rainfall. And there is a heavy focus on native plants usually in a rain garden, although it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So the benefits of the rain garden are that it improves water quality by filtering out pollutants. So that's a common theme with our green infrastructure here is filtering and cleaning the water. It provides localized stormwater flood control. It's aesthetically pleasing. It attracts beneficial birds and insects. It's easy to maintain after establishment. And it can preserve native vegetation if you implement that. So native plants don't require fertilizer. They generally have good root systems, and they are better at utilizing the water and nutrients available in their native soils rather than their non-native species. Trees, perennials, and shrubs, or even wildflowers, or a mixture of all of the above, can be used in a rain garden. Although, as I said, you don't necessarily need to use native plants, but it is great. I think at the end of the day, plant selection needs to be, thoughtful in that you're trying to pick plants that will be okay in standing water for periods of time, and then also probably okay with periods of drought. So rain garden maintenance requires removal of litter. If there's some grassy strips, those need to get mowed. You may need to remove the weeds and include the roots, ideally before the seeds set, which is, I think, where most of us are gardeners in some way or shape, and we probably already know about the importance of removing weeds before the seeds set. We need to monitor this, the channel for soil erosion. We need to clear sediment and debris from cobbles and in front of drainage pipes as well. We need to apply a layer of soil or compost to planted areas if it's needed. And of course, we need to water and replace plants as they are needed. So here's a couple of rain gardens that we have here close to our office here in Burnaby, BC. There are, on the left, we have a rain garden that was quite recently installed, and it looks fairly new and quite beautiful. And then on the right, we have kind of what they look like more regularly and normally. They're a little bit wild looking and sort of a little bit messy, but that's kind of what they look like in general. So rain gardens are being planted and installed very regularly in Burnaby, all throughout the city. It seems like that Burnaby has made that part of their green infrastructure initiative, because pretty much every single new strata or commercial development has these outside of their buildings. And now we are moving on to permeable pavers. So permeable paving is essentially a method of paving that enables infiltration of rainwater. Surfaces typically include pervious concrete, porous asphalt, paving stones, perhaps interlocking pavers, basically anything that is going to allow water to pass through it. These permeable paving systems allow rainwater to percolate and infiltrate through the pavement and into the aggregate layers or soil below. So there's different, I guess, terminology in the industry for these permeable pavers. Permeable and pervious imply that the water can pass freely through the material. But porous means that the water can get in, but not necessarily through. Although all three of the terms are used interchangeably in the industry, but porous is kind of perhaps not the correct word to use. And here's an anatomy of what permeable pavers are going to look like. So you've got your surface cover on top, which would be whatever type of permeable pavers you're using for your application. Then you're going to have a support system underneath, so your base, which would be something that would be compacted, because obviously it's got to support a certain amount of weight, and depending on what the application is, it's going to be a thicker base and more heavily compacted. If it's supporting more weight, like the weight of vehicles, it has to be quite strong in order to support that weight. But if it's just a patio for a residential application, it wouldn't have to be quite such a thick base. And then you will have your sub base, which is just your existing soil underneath. And in many of these applications, you may have an underdrain underneath your surface, but that tends to be mostly when there's heavy clay soil present, because as we probably know, heavy clay soils are problematic. They are very slow to uptake water and then also very slow to release it. So they don't make the best for rainwater management. So the benefits of permeable pavers include the fact that it eliminates runoff. It also recharges the groundwater below, and it traps suspended solids and pollutants, as does all of this green infrastructure. It reduces surface temperatures, and therefore it also reduces the heat island effect, which I'll talk about in a bit. It eliminates the need for retention basins and water collection areas. So if you have permeable pavers, the water doesn't need to be diverted to a storm sewer or anything, because it's actually just going right down into the ground below the permeable pavement. And as such, it eliminates capital costs for these retention basins, curbs, gutters, and all of these other water collection installations that you would otherwise need. Generally, they require less salt and other de-icing products, which is a nice benefit. And of course, the installation costs are lower because you don't have as much underground piping, storm drains, or sloping or grading needed. The life expectancy is the same as concrete as well, which is pretty darn good. So in terms of the types of permeable pavers, there are several different ones. So we've got permeable asphalt and permeable concrete. We've also got plastic grids, which may be filled with grass or gravel. And then of course we have what we would call permeable pavers. So we'll go through them one by one here. Permeable asphalt is pavement, and it can last up to 20 years before showing cracks or potholes, and it's typically used in parking lots, walkways, or playgrounds. Permeable concrete is commonly used in commercial parking lots, alleyways, courtyards, and walkways, and it might also be used in residential driveways, pathways, patios, and pool decks. You can see the surface structure is a little bit different. If you are using a plastic grid with grass, this would be a good application for a fire or a utility access lane. You might even install a green grass driveway, or if you have a big RV that you're storing, you may want to install something like that. It can be used for a retention pond or dry infiltration or basin reinforcement. Also estate grounds, parking lots, gardens and patios, maybe even parks, bicycle trails, and pathways. So lots of applications for this. You can also have plastic grids that may have stone, and these can be used as well in public spaces and parks, driveways, access roads, parking lots, especially like an overflow type of parking lot. Or it could be suitable for, say, like a parking lot at Van Dusen or something. Camping sites are suitable applications, even playgrounds, bicycle trails, pathways, sports grounds, golf cart paths, and then there's also various landscaping and patio applications. There are also concrete pavers that may have grass, or they may not have grass. They could also have gravel. You've probably seen these over the years in emergency and fire lane access areas. These can also be used in some overflow parking lots. Again, golf cart paths, drainage channels. It can also be used for slope stabilization and erosion control, or perhaps even some street shoulder parking. And then we come to permeable pavers. So this is what we tend to install here in our business. So this is typically used in a patio or terrace. It may be also used in a garden or a pool deck, driveway or walkway, maybe some parking stalls, like a parking lot or on the shoulder of the road. And there might be some municipal applications as well in various parks and whatnot. So permeable pavement is generally not for highways and not always for streets. At this time, these permeable pavement isn't really designed to handle, I guess it's probably more the speed of the vehicles that are traveling across it. So I'm going to show you an application where it is used here in Vancouver in a major roadway, but it is also a traffic calmed area where the maximum speed is 30 kilometers. We definitely would not want to be using permeable pavement at a potential spill site. So something like a gas station, it wouldn't be suitable because gas is getting spilled every day at a gas station essentially. And anything where really, really heavy loading is happening as well. So maintenance of permeable pavers, they will become clogged over time, and that can contribute to flooding. So they may require a complete replacement of the permeable pavement, which could be expensive if you're not maintaining it. So what is recommended is that you remove the debris monthly or weekly if you're doing regular maintenance on a maintenance contract, weekly or something like that. But definitely monthly, you want to be removing any litter. If there's grass clippings that are flying onto the pavement. Also leaves, crackweeds, sediment, etc. So what you'll want to do is if you identify any worn or damaged areas, you're going to want to replace them. So sometimes the pavers may get chipped, but more often than not, it's just, I mean, it's all about water filtration. So the water needs to be able to get through it. So if your pavers are flooding, that's when you know you have a problem. So permeable pavement maintenance and care is different for each different type of application. But essentially what you want to do is inspect your paved area after storm events to ensure that it is actually draining. So if you're seeing water pooling up to 36 hours after an event or more than 36 hours after an event, that is a sign that it's not functioning anymore and you need to do some investigation. In terms of snow removal, you want to make sure that you use a rubber-tipped snow shovel to prevent damage and chipping of the application. And if you're using snow plows, typically you want to be setting them a 1/2 inch to 1 inch above the height of the permeable pavement to prevent any damage and chipping. But always follow the manufacturer's instructions for the specific care type of pavement that you have. So here are some permeable pavers that we have here in Olympic Village. in Vancouver. So Olympic Village was built for the 2010 Olympics, as most of you would know, I'm sure. And the idea when they built Olympic Village was that it was going to be sort of a model and also like a demonstration model, I suppose, of water management, stormwater management. So pretty much everything is permeable down there. So you've got permeable sidewalks in the photo on the left. And then typically between your cars and your sidewalk, you would maybe have a strip of grass, but that doesn't typically work very well, and at least in Vancouver. It's just too high traffic, people getting in and out of their cars. So they put in these cobbles, these granite cobbles, which are quite nice. And that is much nicer than walking in the dirt when you get out of your car. Then you also, on the right, photo on the right, you can see that the parking shoulder has been made of permeable pavement. So as much of the surface area in Olympic Village is permeable as possible. So a couple more photos here. On the left-hand side, this is a little park that is next to the village. And we've got some gravel that's underneath, just some park benches. So, I mean, it is a type of hardscape, so I would consider that to be a little bit of a permeable paver application. And then on the photo on the right, this is one of the main roads that runs through the Olympic Village. And this is one of those traffic calmed areas that I was talking about. So you can see almost the whole thing consists of permeable pavers. There's sidewalks and then the road in the middle. And this was taken, all these photos were taken yesterday during our heavy rain event. And unlike that photo I took of downtown, there was no flooding here in Olympic Village. So that is showing that it is functioning and working well and doing what it was intended to do. And that brings us to urban forests. So what is an urban forest? It is essentially a collection of trees that grow within an urban area. And it also is the sustained planting, protection, and maintenance and care of trees, forests and green space, and of course the related resources in and around cities and communities for economic, environmental, social, and public health benefits for people. And urban forests may be private or publicly owned. So in terms of the benefits of the urban forest, it reduces air pollution and provides oxygen. Trees also provide a natural stormwater management system. So a mature deciduous tree can capture as much as 700 gallons of rain a year. So the more trees we can have in a city, the more they're going to soak up and hold onto this water and slowly release it through the process of evapotranspiration. They also improve water filtration through their root systems, which allow it helps water to kind of move through the soil and whatnot. And as we know, it storms and reduces stormwater runoff. So other environmental benefits include reduction of the urban heat island effect and reducing the temperature of cities, which helps cities adapt to climate change. So you can see in the little diagram here, a quick little visual of what the urban heat island. So basically, the temperature is much hotter in the core of a city rather than out, if you were to measure the same temperature outside of the city, it would be quite a bit lower. And that's because all of the hard surfaces and buildings and whatnot that are in the city, all they do is they reflect the heat back up into the air. So it tends to get hotter because not only do we have the sun that's beating down, we have the heat that's reflecting off of these surfaces. So if you can think of when you're walking around in your bare feet and what it's like to walk on hot pavement versus walking on a lawn and it doesn't burn your feet. So that's kind of a way of thinking about the heat island and the difference between the different types of surfaces. Other benefits include reduction of the building's energy use. So by shading buildings, they require less air conditioning in the summer. And then also less heating costs in the winter, because then they allow, in the wintertime, they actually allow the sun to penetrate and warm the houses. And moving on to social benefits, because there are so many benefits of trees. Urban forests make cities more beautiful and can hide unattractive features like walls, freeways, and parking lots. I know I like to install them to create privacy between units in apartment towers or even in homes. Urban forests promote mental well-being and reduce stress, heart rate, and blood pressure, which is probably linked to that theory of biophilia we were mentioning earlier. And then there's also many other social benefits. So it can reduce crime rates and violence. They promote physical activity by providing space for recreation and creating an appealing outdoor environment. Urban forests can promote healing. So people in hospital rooms with views of trees actually heal faster. There's some interesting studies on that. And of course, urban forests can even provide food for people. So this model here shows, this is a permaculture principle where they use the different layers of what they call a forest garden. And you know, these trees can be used to provide food. Urban forests promote social interaction and a sense of community, which includes stronger ties to neighbors and a greater sense of safety and more use of outdoor public spaces. Urban forests increase road safety by slowing traffic, reducing stress, or improving driver attention. And then moving on to the economic benefits they provide. So urban forests provide ecosystem services valued at $330 million per year for Halifax, Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto. Urban forests add value of between $1.88 and $12.70 for every dollar spent on maintaining them. So you're getting a good return on investment by investing in an urban forest. And urban forests increase property values. Generally having a nice landscaping can increase your property value up to 15%. And urban forests are definitely part of that. And they have a positive influence on visitors' perceptions of a city. So I know personally that when I go to other cities and I don't see a lot of trees or greenery around, it's something that really jumps out at me, and I really appreciate the amount of green space and urban forests that we have here in Vancouver. So Vancouver has implemented an urban forest strategy. So in 2014, Vancouver City Council approved this strategy with the goal of protecting the urban forest during development, planting trees to grow and increase the size of our urban forest, to manage our trees for health and safety, engage citizens in the urban forest, and monitor the status and condition of the urban forest. And with that, they revised our tree protection bylaw here in Vancouver. And with that, it is very difficult to get a tree removed here in Vancouver without a very, very, very good reason, which is a good thing. Sometimes it's the bane of our existence in the landscaping industry, but I do appreciate that they are protecting the trees because we need them, and somebody's got to do it. So the strategy to achieve those goals, they're going to be planting 150,000 trees between 2010 and 2020. So I imagine that they're probably just wrapping that up. And then also increasing the urban forest canopy to 22% by 2050. They are planning to restore or enhance 25 hectares of natural areas, including forests, by 2020. And they are doubling the street density in areas of the city that don't have enough trees as of yet. And that would be by 2030. So the Greenview Index is a little ranking system provided by Treepedia, and Treepedia was developed by MIT in collaboration with the World Economic Forum. So what it does is essentially it maps out and measures the urban tree canopy in cities throughout the world, but not using satellite imagery. It actually uses the Google Street View, And it has ranked Vancouver as #2 for canopy coverage in the world. So that's pretty darn good. And then Toronto is also right behind, placing 8th, which is pretty darn good considering how many cities in the world there are. And I just want to quickly touch on green roofs here. So green roofs are engineered systems that incorporate vegetation onto traditional roofing to bring environmental, economic, and social benefits to urban areas. There are 3 classifications of green roofs. So an extensive green roof is just basically a shallow, lightweight green roof. It will often have just like little flat sedums and maybe some small grasses. Because it doesn't have a lot of soil or a lot of plant material, it is the least expensive to maintain. And of course, also the lowest maintenance. It requires little to no irrigation, and it is used as an ecological roof or protection layer. Then we also have semi-intensive green roofs. Those have a moderate soil depth, so usually between 6 and 12 inches. And also because there's more soil and more plant material, there's going to be more weight. Typically, grasses and shrubs will be growing there, and it's more expensive than an extensive roof because it's more materials. The maintenance is a little bit higher. It does need a bit more irrigation, and it might have mixed use. So it's an ecological protection layer, so it's functional for that, but it's also maybe open to people for a garden. And then we have an intensive green roof. So it's got the greatest soil depth. It's the heaviest. It may have lawns, perennials, shrubs, and trees. It is the most expensive to install because it's got a lot more engineering and materials involved. And it also requires the highest level of maintenance. It does require regular irrigation, and it would typically be an accessible park-like garden space. So this is one of our properties that we maintain near Cambie and Broadway here in Vancouver, and it's called The Rise. And you can see it's a rental project, but it's got a community garden. It's got a nice grass space where all of the residents, they play bocce and whatnot. Yeah, it's a really nice area. So in terms of water retention, green roofs, they outperform obviously a standard roof quite significantly. They retain 80% of the water that falls on it, and at peak runoff up to 74%. So other benefits specific to green roofs, they extend the life of the roof. So it's a misconception that trees and plant material damage green roofs, or damage the membrane, but that's not true. What damages the membrane is actually, it's really either just the membrane fails through either age, or it fails because it wasn't installed properly. And unfortunately, it not being installed properly is probably the #1 reason. So contractors cutting corners, and they know all of their work is going to get covered up by all of this material. No one will ever know. But then, you know, a tree or something will find a hole and seek it out and make it worse. So, but essentially they insulate the building for greater energy efficiency. So looking ahead, we in the landscape industry have added the installation and maintenance of green roofs and walls, and also stormwater and rainwater management systems to our Red Seal occupational standard. So apprentices will be learning these elements through their schooling and training going forward. And our industry sees itself as a community partner to help mitigate the effects of climate change. So Vancouver, just to touch on this quickly, we have developed most recently a Rain City strategy, and it has 3 goals. So it's to improve, protect Vancouver's water quality, increase Vancouver's resilience through sustainable water management, and to enhance Vancouver's livability. So the goal is for us to capture and clean a minimum of 90% of Vancouver's average annual rainfall, which is quite a lofty target, but it's a good one. And the design standard is to capture and clean rainwater from a minimum of the first 48 millimeters of rainfall per day. They will be doing this by increasing the impermeable surfaces in exchange for permeable ones, increasing the total green space, reducing the volume of rainwater that is entering the sewer system, harvesting and reusing water, and of course, utilizing all of these wonderful green infrastructure elements that we've just discussed. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I will turn off screen share. There we go. Over to you, Bill.
Hey, Jennifer, that was great. A lot of really, really good information. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
As you know, it's something that's kind of dear to my heart, so I really appreciate it, especially. How much time do we have left for questions and answers, Rebecca? Or if you're there? We didn't get any. I should have at the very beginning mentioned that you can write questions in either the chat session or the Q&A session as the presentation goes on, but I didn't do that, so we didn't get a lot of questions. If you have any, feel free to ask now. If not, we got a couple during from the chat session versus the Q&A. One of them was from John, and he was asking if there was any cost analysis for some of these things. I don't know if you know the answer to that, Jen, but the CNLA did a life cycle cost analysis for stormwater management. I think we plan on doing more as we have funding available. It's available. Rebecca has posted the link in the chat session. So that is one way. I think generally speaking, and Jennifer alluded to this during the presentation, often they're more expensive up front, but they save money downstream. So I haven't seen anything else come in. So I have a couple of questions here, Jen. I don't know if you can answer, or maybe even some of the municipalities online can answer. Okay. But as these features are being installed by cities, do you know how the cities manage to make them happen? Do they make it happen through bylaws or regulations, or perhaps incentives to developers? Do you have any idea how these things are made to happen? Yeah, well, I know within Vancouver, it starts with these little kind of, they put together these community groups that will consult and give them information, and then they'll come up with a plan. So there's all these different professionals and people providing input. And then it seems like the councils will then take this information and decide, okay, is this a plan that we should do? They'll pass it, some regulations happen. I mean, it's a huge, long process, as you would know. Yeah, once they set out this plan and these regulations and whatnot, then, you know, the different, I guess, components of the city can start doing their things. Like the planning department would then have to follow the regulations and whatnot that they've set out for developers and whatnot, which is a huge part of it. I mean, really changing the way we are building and rebuilding our cities is really the way to go. That's the point at which we can actually affect the change that's needed. So perfect. So we had some more questions, but we have to move along because we got another webinar starting in just 10 minutes. I want to thank especially Jennifer from Paraspace, Jennifer and Paraspace, for providing this presentation today. It was full of information. I'm not sure, we'll find out afterwards if there's some way that we can address the additional questions that we had, that we can get that out to the participants today. So I also want to especially thank again Ball Superior or Ball Horticultural for too many ball companies, sorry, for sponsoring today. We hope that you'll be joining in more of our virtual seminars or symposium, or during the symposium sessions that run Wednesday and Thursdays over the next 3 weeks, with the final town hall session on Friday, October 9th. Our next webinar is coming up shortly at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And it is, the topic is City of Brampton's Backyard Program. So you probably have a few minutes to go grab a coffee or whatever. Please remember that you can't just stay logged into this webinar. Each webinar has its own unique link, so you have to leave this one and then come into the next one. So I think that's about all we have time for now, because we have to go and prepare for the next one. So hopefully we see all of you on the next one. I'm sure it will be beneficial as well. We have, I think, a total of 3 today, maybe more. I know I'm involved with 3. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for all the best to everybody, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jennifer.